Hey guys, welcome back to another installment of this Q&A series. We are on part 12 of however many, and 10 minutes on the clock, give or take, here we go. Rino Shala says, how do you mentally deal with injuries that might keep you from doing one of the 3 lifts for months or longer? Mentally, you have to stay focused on the perspective that it will be okay eventually, or coping with the idea that it may not. And that's kind of an ambiguous answer, I understand. If it's something that is degenerative or chronic to the point where you're not able to safely complete the lifts for the competition, it's unfortunate that you would have to pursue some other means, but you just have to work around it. It's a lot easier in something like bodybuilding where there's no standard for the movement, but there's other, in powerlifting you have to, those are the 3 lifts. You could you look at it as an opportunity, if it is a temporary thing that you're recovering from, as an opportunity to fix weaknesses in those other areas, and just realize that when it does start coming back, it may be slow, but you get to experience those little joys of the post-injury PRs. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but when I had my back injury a few years ago, when I started getting back to it, I was never more excited to hit a 500-pound squat than after that had happened, because it was so, even though I'd been there before, it was such an awesome feeling to say, okay, now I'm getting back into it. And so you just have to keep that mentality of if it isn't permanent, that you keep that in mind and you get a chance to work on the other things and you look forward to that. If it is permanent, or something happened like that, then you try to find other ways in your life. And that's why I think it's really important to be a balanced individual. I've talked about that before. If you have every aspect of your life is involved in this one thing, even if it's the center thing, I feel like you just don't have anything to fall back on. I mean, I could walk out of the door tomorrow and get hit by a bus and my leg, I get paralyzed or something, and I can't do this anymore. So what else do I have to fall back on? It's the other things that you're interested in. And I think Brandon Lilly actually is a very good example of someone who, when he had his double knee issue and people were telling him he may never be able to walk again, and he's like, well, when can I squat again? And he came back and he just did a meet recently, and he deadlifted 700 pounds and was only able to squat 135 because his knees are still in that condition. But there is a way to come back from some of the things, where if you believe in yourself enough and you are committed to those little victories and the improvement, it can be a positive thing. And I think Brandon will be the first one to tell you also that it gave him a chance to look at other areas of his life and assess what he had that wasn't related to lifting and the people that were around him, and it made him appreciate them more. And I think that as traumatic and tragic as that incident was, I think the mindset that he exhibited after the fact was one of growth in other areas, and I think that ends up being a healthy thing. So if you can find a way to do that, then that's a good way to go about it. And you say, when I pull conventional and a lever belt, I feel weaker than without a belt. Do you have any tips on belt placement and tightness compared to the squat? I think for a deadlift, your belt needs to be a little looser. Personally, for me, I can't really wrench it down because it inhibits my ability to get to the bar, especially in conventional pulls. And sumos, it's not that much of an issue because I don't feel as hunched, but because of my leverages and the angles I have to get to that bar, I've recently had a similar issue where I'm pulling conventional once a week, and every time I try it with a belt, it feels terrible because the belt's too tight for that position, but it's not too tight for my sumo pulls because my hips are more open and I'm more extended. It's not that tight for my squats. So a looser belt, possibly. Some people say a higher belt, but I like to keep mine low, so that is more dependent on where you feel the best amount of bracing. But a belt should assist you in the lift. That's the point, unless your name is Konstantin Konstantinov. So, Tiago Belém, how often do you test your maxes on the main lifts, including meets? Depends on how many meets I have in a year. I rarely test single maxes. I do rep maxes more frequently. I have a running list of PRs all the way from 1 rep all the way up to 10 reps on my computer. I try to keep track of those, and I don't have numbers in some of those. Like a 6 rep max on my bench isn't something that I've ever tested because I work in 1s, 3s, 5s, and 8s generally, and so it gives you some areas to do that. But I am definitely a big proponent that if you're going to do a max, you darn well better have a judge there or 3 of them to get it in the books, because that's, you know, that's the point of doing it. Unless you don't feel like doing competitions, in which case that's totally cool, but that's how I approach it, and that's the time when I want to have those maxes, because I want them to count. Chinley Dan says, "Hi Ben, with regards to making friends, what do you look for in or find has drawn you to people that's apart from having common interests? Being good friends and with fellow choir members or lifters is probably a given." That's a really good question. My interpretation, I guess, of this is, what do I find is appealing from other human beings that draws me to them? And it sounds really cheesy, but just nicety. Someone's ability to be a kind, generous, well-meaning person. I run into a lot of people who are boastful, braggish, and very self-involved, and that's something that happens a lot with people in music and people in the lifting community, because they are such personal things that when you do develop some sort of high degree of achievement or status, it's really easy to lose yourself in that and to become more egocentric and egotistical. And I am really drawn to people who are good at stuff, and you wouldn't know it by talking to them. Something that I have tried to put into my own life, and I mentioned this once in a video on another channel, that if you have the opportunity to talk to someone and you're making an impression on them, and you're sitting there constantly wanting to talk about yourself and tell them all the cool things that you are, like, hey, look at me, look what I've done, look at my achievements and my accomplishments, and I want you to do that, I want you to respect that. I think the biggest impact you can have on other people is making them enjoy the time they spend with you and having them feel special in that time. And when someone is with me and they have a way of, when I enjoy spending that time with them, not because of the mutual interest, but because they seem interested in me as a person, and I can then share that, and I'm not constantly waiting in the conversation to try to get my words in. One of the fastest ways to turn me off of a person is to have them come up and tell me all about themselves. And I think that goes for a lot of people. I think you should have to learn a little bit about the person, and it encourages you to keep asking them questions. I think that good, real friendships and relationships in that aspect need to be something that has to grow, because you don't have all the information right at the start, and I think it's really important to do that. So thank you for that question. And your second question, your training emphasizes specificity, but you're also not averse to trying new things and putting significant time into movements that aren't very close variants, such as pulling conventional. As an elite natural, take the compliment please, I will, thank you, who needs a lot of specificity. Can you comment on that? Would more specificity be unhelpful? Thanks again very much for all you do and the opportunity to ask. I would say that there is an idea that people are pursuing optimal all the time, and I think that specificity is great if you don't have weaknesses, and I've addressed this in a couple of things. I have a couple of very glaring weaknesses that need less specific things, and once I get more balanced as far as my musculature and fix some of the issues that I have, then I will have to rely more on the specificity. But I think a good way to go about it, honestly, is to be more specific the closer you get to a meet, and you can be less specific so that you have somewhere to go from there. I think it's important in your off season or the time immediately after a meet, when you're in between, that you get the chance to work on fixing those weaknesses and then improve or increase the specificity as you get closer to sports performance, and to make the separation and the distinction there. You cannot, I don't believe that there's an optimal way to do it all the time, because it is really dependent on the person and where they're at and what their strengths and weaknesses are and what needs to be addressed. And the better you get, the more specific you need to be in your training. But I also think that I am at the point where there are still weaknesses. I haven't gotten to the point where I consider myself so elite that I don't have things that need direct focus that may or may not be the competition lifts themselves. So I hope that answers your second question, but thank you for asking. again, I think we're out of time. It's really hard for me to tell because it's getting late and my eyes are getting a little, whew. I think we're getting close anyway. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and that it was informative or helpful in some way, or that you enjoyed it or found it entertaining, or like we know each other a little better and are better friends now. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like, rating, comment, subscribe. Forgive me if I've been repeating myself at any point, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.